Thank you very much. That was a remarkable overview of middle-income countries in general and the BRICS in particular. Fascinating. And I want to come back to it, but I'd like to begin by asking you to step back and give us your assessment of where we are in the global recovery, taking into account the mix and the BRICS, understanding that they too are having some difficulties. India's growth has slowed sharply. China is predicting a slowing of growth. And of course, we know what's happening in North America and Europe. So can you give us your assessment of where are we along this path? Are we still, are we recovering, or are we just teetering on some edge still?
Well, Marshall, if you look at the crisis back in 2008, 2009, that was when the contraction global economy almost everywhere. It's only a few countries, China, India, Indonesia has a positive growth, but almost all countries I've been visiting, Latin America, Asia, the other ASEAN country, Africa, they are all suffering from this negative growth. So it was a very depressing time back in 2009. So when you see the concerted effort by leaders, especially on the forum of G20, they by design and very coordinated tried to do the counter-cyclical policy. All of them, regardless their situation of their domestic economy. Whether this is through the fiscal stimulus or through the relaxing the monetary policy. And that's very remarkable in terms of the result. 2010, you see a lot of countries rebound, even double-digit growth. That creates a lot of false optimism, as if the situation is already solved. In fact, the one which is solved is just the recovery, because you come from a very deep contraction into a recovery. But the structural problem, whether in a financial institution, public debt, especially the public debt in advanced country, has not been solved yet. And that's now coming up again in 2011, especially on the last part, and continue in 2012. Because then the real issue about how you are going to deal with this country exposed by such a huge debt in Europe, how you are going to deal and fix the financial sector. Many of them has been actually supported, life supported, if you can call it that way, or supported through a very generous liquidity expansion by both central banks here as well as in Europe. But that's not the real life. This is just the life in which you are not really based on a strong, healthy balance sheet. So when you ask about where the recovery, we are recovering, but it's still in a very weak position, because the fragile recovery, it's always have the downside risk of this structural problem. If you learn from Indonesian 97-98 financial crisis, we suffer almost like 1% growth for 5 years. It was a very painful recovery. We have a combination of deleveraging, you have the public debt, which is increasing very dramatically because of the financial bailout. And then you also have political transition. That make all the complication. That's exactly what is the episode now in Europe. So at some point, we were lucky at that time because the global economy, the rest of the world, was healthy. So they can pull us, because then we can expand our export. And that's make the recoveries faster. Now it's becoming very complicated, because that's why they ask, who's going to pull Europe out from the external demand? And that's why they look at China, Asia, Latin America, to become the source of growth by making them competitive and exporting their commodity there. Or within Europe, they see German as the source of the market to pull other European. So in this case, yes, we are recovering from 2008-2009 financial crisis. There is a correction in 2011. This is just to remind that the structural problem need to be addressed. And in order to address that structural problem, it will take time. Some painful step is going to cost a little bit longer of all what you call it the adjustment.